After receiving shocking news from Mom that my sister Margaret, who had eloped and gone missing long ago, had returned, my son Walter and I went home, only to find, as expected, a pair of women's shoes. Moreover, my sister, Margaret, who appeared, was shockingly in her underwear. She burst into laughter and proudly boasted to me. Snagged myself a luxurious high-rise condo and a rich husband. Let the poor slog away at part-time jobs for life. But then a voice came from behind. Too bad. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore. My husband, Mitchell, said this nonchalantly as he appeared. So you thought you could create a fait accompli with me? He started laughing. And to what end, I wonder? You know all the houses belongs to Sabrina, right? Yes, the high-rise condo we currently live in is mine. It was something I acquired through inheritance from my previous husband. My name is Sabrina Newman. I'm a 34-year-old working for an organization involved in the preservation of American classical culture. Mitchell is a former junior of mine in graduate school, where he too studied American classics, 3 years my junior. He is currently continuing his research to finish his thesis and obtain his PhD, while still enrolled in the doctoral program. Since he has more free time, he helps with taking our son, Walter, to and from school and extracurricular activities, in place of me, who is running around working during the day. But that's not all. Frankly, Mitchell is much better at household chores than I am. He makes simple yet efficient meals. Cleans with minimal effort required to keep things tidy, other than his own study space. And handles laundry and everything related to it more delicately and carefully than I could. I'll take care of you for life. So can I ask you to take care of the housework? That was essentially how I proposed to him. Honestly, I fell for those aspects of Mitchell. I was just too busy to handle everything. I told him he didn't have to worry about living necessities and could continue his research. Even his parents were surprised. They even asked if I intended to treat their son as a toy boy, which now feels nostalgic. But in the end, after discussing our feelings, how we'd adjust our lives together, our child, and many other things, we got married, and he became a stay-at-home dad. Though it was an unusual pairing, we were getting along happily and having fun. But then, one day, something unexpected happened. It was a certain Tuesday afternoon. That day, with Mitchell's mind preoccupied with his thesis, I decided to unusually pick up Walter myself from work. Just as I was about to leave in the car, the phone suddenly rang. Hello? Mom, what's up? It was from Mom. My parents' home is located in a rural area, a 5 to 6 hour drive from the metropolitan area we currently live in. Since getting married, whether we go there for a long vacation has been a question. So, we usually keep in touch frequently through messaging apps. But it's rare for her to call me directly. Both of my parents, considering my busy work life, usually specify a time when they call. It's terrible, Sabrina. What happened all of a sudden? Margaret has come back. Margaret has? Margaret is my sister, 2 years younger than me. However, I haven't seen her for over 10 years. She ran away from home at the age of 18. Apparently, her partner's company went bankrupt. Bankrupt? Yes. She kept ringing the doorbell, and when she came in, she said they had incurred a huge amount of debt and her partner had fled in the night. To avoid debt collectors coming after her too, she had someone else sign for her and file for divorce. Without realizing it, I let out a sigh. And now? I told her she couldn't stay, but she showed up anyway, and she even left her daughter with us. What? She left her behind? Yes. The girl was so small, I asked her age and was really surprised. So, what surprised you? Well, when she arrived, I thought she was still in kindergarten. But turns out, she's just 1 year younger than Walt. What? A year younger than Walter, who's 9? If that's the case, she should be in her 2nd year of elementary school. Yet, to look like a kindergartner. Hey Mom, is she really that small? She's not only small, but also extremely thin. Her skin is rough, and she has cuts and bruises. I've given her some snacks and let her take a shower, but she seems very uncomfortable. The voice of Mom speaking sounded like she was holding back tears, as if she might break down at any moment. But this had to be asked. Mom, you wouldn't kick her out, would you? What are you saying? Of course not. No matter how terrible Margaret may be as a parent, this child is our granddaughter. Ah, her clothes are all torn. That's a relief. So, Mom, where did Margaret go after leaving the child? That was something I had to ask. She's headed your way, Sabrina. Why to my place? Apparently, before coming to us, she had gone to see some old acquaintances. And somehow, she was told that you married a rich man. I instinctively placed my hand on my forehead. Whoever it is, giving partial information can cause trouble. Did that person give her our address? No, but it seems she got your work-related SNS account. Work-related, huh? Can't be helped. My job sometimes requires a certain degree of publicity through SNS. So, Kevin is hurrying over to your house right now. Dad is? So please, hold on until he gets there. Wait, Mom, when did Margaret leave there? Before I could get a response, Mom hung up. It's just past 3 p.m. now. Picking up Walter from school and then taking him to his extracurricular activities, waiting for him to finish, and then doing some shopping. Mitchell has been so absorbed in his work since yesterday that he won't be up for preparing meals tonight or all day tomorrow. So, shopping is definitely necessary. And even if he takes a break from writing, he's likely to sleep through meals. Usually, after staying up for about 3 days, he ends up sleeping for a day and a half. It seems it'll be past 6 p.m. by the time I finish buying ingredients for meals that can be prepared quickly. I was worrying about what will happen next. What? You have a sister? Yes. I see. I decided to explain the situation to Walter in the car after finishing the shopping. Are you surprised? No, well, I figure since it's our family, there must be a lot going on. Walter, being 9 years old and in the 3rd grade of elementary school, is quite perceptive and somewhat mature for his age. Our family being somewhat unconventional, he quickly understands situations when explained. I suppose he takes after his father in that regard. When I was a child, my interactions with my sis were much more simplistic, often involving loud arguments. Walter, in contrast, is calm and thoughtful. Almost worryingly so. Well, yes, there's a lot going on. Like what? Where should I start? There are things that can be shared with a child and things that cannot. You know the house where we used to live, right? Yeah, near Grandpa and Grandma's place. My sister didn't like staying in that town and ran away over 10 years ago with someone she loved. Wow, that's kind of cool. Wait till you hear the rest of the story. Yes, Margaret ran away at the age of 18 with a venture company president who was nearly 40 years old at the time. But it wasn't really about love. Margaret was into sugar dating. Even while she was in high school. Our family never made me or Margaret want for anything. They had saved enough to send us to any school we wished to attend. And gave us more than enough allowance every month. But it seems that was still not enough for Margaret. Margaret had gone to a private university in the city center, but at the end of her first semester, the Academic Affairs Department suddenly contacted us. It turned out Margaret was pregnant. When Dad, furious, demanded to know who the father was, Margaret confessed the name without hesitation. It was the same person she later married and divorced on her own. Angry both at the sugar dating and the man involved, our parents told Margaret to leave. She left without argument and then cut off all communication with us. Once the initial anger subsided, concern crept in. The absence of any news from her felt like a breach of duty, adding to our parents' anger. They became the subject of rumors in the neighborhood and at work. Suffering the embarrassment of having raised a daughter who would do such a thing. Dad, who had been a strong candidate for a promotion, felt it was out of reach for a while. I've heard various painful stories about those times. However, hearing Mom's story earlier, something else caught my attention. The child is said to be 8 years old now. Which means it's not the same child that Margaret was pregnant with over 10 years ago. What happened to that child? That's something I can't help but wonder about. Mom, you look scared. I apologized to Walter in response to his comment. Is something bothering you? Yes. I'm thinking about your cousin. Eventually, we returned to the apartment, laden with bags from our shopping. But the bags were too heavy, so I decided to borrow a cart from the concierge at the entrance. Mrs. Newman, your sister, Miss Edwards, was here earlier. The concierge informed us. Wait, you let her in? We checked and copied her ID for verification. At that, I covered my eyes with my palm again. I'm sorry. It's my fault for not ensuring strict control over who comes and goes. So, I shouldn't have let her in? Well, yes, but it's okay for this time. It's my fault. Also, has Dad arrived yet? Your father? Please wait a moment, the concierge said before checking. It seems he has not arrived yet. I see. Well, when my dad does arrive, please let him in immediately. Understood. I showed a picture of Dad to the concierge, emphasizing that he should definitely be let in. Then, loading our bags onto the cart, we took the elevator up to the top floor. We're home. As expected, when I opened the door, there were women's shoes. Oh, you're back early. What came out was Margaret, flashier than in my memories, but also appropriately aged. But that wasn't the issue. What's with that outfit? Margaret had appeared in just her underwear. Walter, who had been pushing the cart beside me, was wide-eyed and speechless. What do you mean? Then she laughed and boasted to me as if she had one. Snagged myself a luxurious, high-rise condo and a rich husband. Let the poor slog away at part-time jobs for life. Walter and I were stunned. But then a voice came from behind her. Too bad. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore. Margaret's backdrop changed as Mitchell appeared, wearing a shirt over his bare skin. His disheveled hair and the way he came rubbing his head, juxtaposed with Margaret's state, could mistakenly suggest a scenario had occurred between them. However, such a thought didn't cross my mind at all. That's impossible for him. I had that confidence. Ah, great. Her messing around with stuff like that broke my concentration. Seriously. Wait, what do you mean it didn't work? You knew about the sleeping pills. I did think it was strange I was feeling so sleepy out of nowhere, but that doesn't mean I can just fall asleep because of it. That's odd, isn't it? Ignoring Margaret, Mitchell turned to Walter. Walter, you went shopping for us? Thank you. Yeah, Dad, help me put things away. Saying so, Walter pushed the cart inside. Okay, Mitchell said, pushing the cart with Walter to the kitchen. As they moved, he muttered, both annoyed and deliberately. I heard from Sabrina that she had a sister, so I thought there might be something up. But to be drugged upon first meeting? Well, my sleep schedule is all over the place anyway, and I'm so preoccupied with what I'm working on that I don't sleep unless I decide to. So, I can tell the difference between natural sleepiness and the one caused by pills. Margaret's expression turned even more sour, hearing Mitchell's words. I figured you were up to something, so I just played along and pretended to be asleep. But really, what are you doing? Mitchell spoke in a calm, matter-of-fact manner. Facing him, Margaret, who had appeared confident at first, was shocked, not understanding what had happened. What's with this guy? It was a bad match for her, to say the least. I'm the one who wants to ask what's going on. What's with that outfit? And you stripped his clothes off, trying to create some fait accompli? I sighed deeply. Why has she always been so foolish? Still, it's not hard to imagine what happened here. Margaret found out I was living in a high-rise condo in the capital region and came all the way here. She then went around the neighborhood, claiming to be the sister of someone living on the top floor of a high-rise condo, gathering information. She figured out that Mitchell, while being a stay-at-home dad, was doing research related to my current job. She must have assumed Mitchell would be home alone and targeted a time when I was out. From Mitchell's perspective, after being persistently buzzed, he finally noticed the intercom to see a woman claiming to be my sister. At that point, he was still half in his research, not fully back to reality. From Margaret's perspective, a seemingly unkempt man in almost indoor clothing answered the door. She probably thought, "Wow, he's young. Did Sabrina manage to snag a younger, intellectual guy who owns a high-rise condo?" Then, she proceeded to drug him with sleeping pills she inexplicably had, strip him down, and push him into the bed, intending to present that scene to me. But Margaret doesn't know Mitchell. He's the type to lose track of time and meals when engrossed in research or writing papers. That such a scheme would be futile against someone like him is something I know all too well. What? She wanted to create a fait accompli between us. Mitchell's voice grew louder, and he burst into laughter, holding his stomach. What would that even accomplish? The house is all Sabrina's, you know? Yeah, what's this old woman talking about? What did this kid say? Well, he is my son, after all. Yours? He's pretty big for that. This guy's still in his 20s, right? Well, he's from my previous marriage. What? Remarried? So the marriage to a wealthy man. You wouldn't know, having been on the run all this time. Saying this, I finally entered my own home. As I took off my coat and placed my bag down, Mitchell made some tea, saying good job to me. Glancing around, I noticed a half-opened bag carelessly placed on the living room table. The room, clean except for my study, seemed oddly disordered just because of that bag. It was unsettling. I wanted to tidy it up immediately. What? You're not going to offer me even a cup of tea? Margaret stared at me resentfully as I enjoyed my tea. I don't feel like offering anything to someone who puts sleeping pills in drinks. Ugh. More importantly, how long do you plan on staying in that outfit? I don't want a seductress wandering around my home. First explain why you, of all people, own this high-rise condo. Why can Margaret never keep up with a conversation? Well, I suppose I'll have to explain, or she won't understand. Look, when my previous husband passed away leaving his child behind, he left us a considerable fortune. That's how I bought this place. Paid in full, not on a mortgage. Paid in full, by you? But this place costs millions of dollars. Well, it's still just 1/100th of the real estate I own now. Margaret was at a loss for words. Indeed, the top floor of this high-rise condo is entirely mine. But that's not all. I now own numerous properties and have a net worth of $200 million. Managing my passive income allows for a comfortable lifestyle, and I serve as an advisor to an organization involved in the preservation of American classical culture. Part of it for tax purposes and partly for Mitchell. My busy daily work is in my role as a director of this organization, and I occasionally receive reports on land matters. When I explained, "You own what?" "Yes, I do. You probably don't know, Margaret, but I got married right after graduating from college. Though you probably don't even know why that happened." "What do you mean?" "Because of the huge mess you made, Dad's reputation at his company plummeted, and things got very difficult." "I was already an adult. What I did was my own business." "You weren't of age at that time, though. Having a daughter who's been sugar dating since high school made people think we were incapable of proper parenting. Mom felt ashamed for a while. Then, I happened to get a marriage proposal from the Anderson family." "The Anderson family?" "Yes, the so-called lords of our local area, that family." "What? You married into that noble family?" I sighed. Then Mitchell, "Let's go over there for a bit," took Walter aside, saying so. Walter, understanding it was an adult conversation, complied. "So what? You married into that family?" "Yes, but not to the person you're thinking of. I married the elder brother, the next in line." "That Bedredden, good-for-nothing, considered the family's burdened by the Andersons?" "Yes, him. Indeed, my ex-husband was described that way. He has been weak since birth, has hardly ever gone to school, and was always in the presence of a doctor. That's why he was said to be the baggage of that famous family. But that was merely the external perspective. His parents and the brother-in-law, the heir, did not think of him that way. Everyone loved him, a man without desires, for his kindness. It was he who, having happened to see me during one of my hospital visits, fell for me. The Anderson family themselves came to our home to request my hand in marriage for their son, who had never asked for anything else before, bowing their heads to me, who was more than a decade younger. To slightly ease my parents' social standing, I married at the age of 22. My ex-husband passed away while Walter was still in my womb. Even this pregnancy was through artificial insemination. He simply didn't have the strength to father a child naturally. It was my parents-in-law wish to have a grandchild if possible. And for the sake of my kind ex-husband, I agreed. He was able to watch my belly grow but passed away without seeing his child's face, leaving only a name behind. After becoming a young widow, my in-laws thanked me for everything and, following his will, left me his inheritance. However, some relatives eyed the considerable inheritance that suddenly came to me like hyenas. Therefore, when Walter was about to enter kindergarten, I moved to a secure high-rise condo in the city center. After further explaining this, Margaret reacted. "Yeah, right." She shook her head and hands, exclaiming, "You expect me to believe such a stroke of luck story?" Her face was filled with utter disbelief as she shouted at me. "Well, it's your choice to believe it or not." "Then what about that man now? You got such an inheritance and you're allowed to remarry." I was allowed, though I didn't really need permission. Still, I consulted them out of guilt for such wonderful in-laws. They said they were sorry that I had to spend the best years of my youth caring for an ill person and going through a pregnancy via artificial insemination. That's more than enough with such an inheritance. They said time and life cannot be bought with money. My kind in-laws, who had lost their beloved son to illness, understood these two values very well. Likely because they were wealthy. After moving to the city, my life differed from when I was with my in-laws. I was exhausted from single-handedly raising a child. That's when I reunited with Mitchell, a junior from my college days who had admired me. He became a great help to me, overwhelmed as I was. Gradually, Walter grew attached to him, and I began to think it would be nice if Mitchell stayed with us, leading me to propose. My in-laws described Mitchell as harmless and seemingly uninterested in anything but his studies. Their support, rather than opposition, to our marriage might also have served as a deterrent to relatives who were keen on pushing their candidates for remarriage onto me, thinking they could control the inheritance.
So, you get to have all the good fortune.
Just as Margaret began to speak, my mobile phone rang. The call at this time meant, ah. I switched the phone to speaker mode after answering.
Hello, Sabrina. I hadn't heard back from you for a while. Are you okay?
Margaret groaned on the spot. Mom, I'm fine, really.
Good to hear. By the way, I just heard a noise like a frog being squashed. Is Margaret there by any chance?
Yes, she is. I looked at Margaret with a full smile.
Mom? How did you know I'm here? You've always been the type to forget what you said after just taking 3 steps. Didn't you tell me you were going to Sabrina's? That's awful. How can you treat your daughters so differently?
Margaret shouted angrily at the mobile phone.
What? Do you think you're in any position to say that? After you left, it was Sabrina marrying into the Anderson family that saved us from the mess you made. Kevin had a decent position in the company, which only made the rumors worse. That was all cleared up in just 2 years, thanks to Sabrina. The Andersons pulled some strings for us, saving our neighborhood, relatives, and Kevin's colleagues who admire him. You were about to ruin all of Kevin's hard work and progress in the most important company in our town. That's not my problem. I didn't ask him to be successful. But it's thanks to that success we could attend a private university in the city center.
Yes, so?
That doesn't give you the right to be self-righteous.
Maybe so.
But, Margaret, what happened to the child you were carrying back then?
With a chilling tone, Mom asked Margaret a piercing question.
What? You ran away with your partner because you were pregnant. So, what happened to that child? He took the child with him. I managed to get in touch with that person of yours.
Margaret moaned.
Impossible. Through Mr. Anderson's connections, when I was looking for where you guys were, I managed to get a hold of your mobile phone number.
Mom said this in a way that felt like she was cornering her.
The person said, "I'm sorry for running away, and I'm grateful she agreed to the divorce." It seems, though his talent for making money was mediocre, he was a better person than you. He said he couldn't say where, but he's found a job far away and intend to pay off his debts. All by himself. By himself?
I questioned Mom.
Yes, by himself. You can imagine what that means, can't you, Sabrina?
Mom had mentioned that the child Margaret brought was in a terrible state. I quickly turned to Margaret.
Your own child. Stop it. Why are you looking at me like that? Mom mentioned it. The girl you left with her was very thin. That's because things have been tough recently. Tough, yet carrying that kind of bag?
I pointed to the bag carelessly left on the living room table.
Clearly a brand name, isn't it? I bought it 2 or 3 years ago. And the girl, just a year younger than Walter, looked like a kindergartner, didn't she, Mom? Yes, that's right.
Mom's voice grew even lower.
She said her name was Alice. Did you even send her to kindergarten or school? She seems a bit delayed in speech. Of course.
Grandma, is Mom over there? A frail voice came from the other side. Yes, Alice. Do you want to talk to Mom? No. I definitely don't want to go back.
I don't want to return to Mom.
Alice, Margaret's daughter, started crying on the other side.
I don't want to end up like Ashley.
I see. A horrifying truth seemed to lurk beneath these words.
We've been chatting on and off. There seems to have been a sister named Ashley.
It's from the past. In other words,
I don't know anything about that.
As Margaret hastily tried to grab her bag and clothes.
Not so fast.
He grabbed her hand while Walter secured the bag and clothes. Then, turning to another mobile phone.
Hello, Grandpa, now's the time.
As if on cue, the front door opened.
Police! We received a report of a woman here on charges of illegal entry, assault, and child abuse.
Sabrina.
You did well to stall for time. Dad!
Several police officers then secured Margaret on the spot.
Are you all right, Mrs. Newman?
Yes, I'm fine. The concierge was also standing at the entrance, having unlocked the door.
Long time no see, Margaret. Dad.
A police officer took Margaret's clothes and bag from Walter. Since there wasn't time to dress her, a blanket they had presumably brought was draped over Margaret. Pointing to the bag. We haven't checked, but I believe it contains sleeping pills. I'll be accompanying you for a blood test. My body doesn't react much to them, but I believe it's still in my system.
We appreciate your cooperation.
Then, over the phone, Mom asked me to switch to camera mode, revealing herself holding a small girl in her arms.
Officers, it seems Margaret has harmed her first child as well, leading to the loss of a small life, our first grandchild.
Alice is wearing Walter's clothes when he was much younger. Walter had been quite big for his age when he was about to enter kindergarten. But these clothes seemed to fit Alice, albeit slightly snug. Her thin, bony wrists were visible at the cuffs. Ah, those are my clothes. Hi, are you Alice? Walter gently spoke to his cousin through the screen, displaying the kindness inherited from his biological father. Yes, who's this? I'm Walter. Your cousin. I'm 1 year older, so I'm like a brother. Brother. Mentioning brother seemed to remind her of Ashley, her sister who was no longer with them, and Alice started to whimper. Come and play sometime. The girl on the screen nodded slightly. All right, Sabrina, we'll take her away now. Sorry for the intrusion. Walter, let's play shogi later.
Okay, I'll be waiting.
Right after our exchange.
What is this? Your own little family drama. Well, I have lost everything.
Hearing this, I quickly approached Margaret and slapped her sharply across the face.
Hey! You violent woman! Police officer! Arrest her for obstructing justice.
As the officers restrained the struggling Margaret, one of them gave me a wry smile and gently chided. Let's not do that, please. Sorry.
But I had to say this to Margaret. What do you want? Everything you lost is because of your own actions. It's nobody's fault but yours. Nothing will ever return to you, and I'll make sure of it. Alice will be part of our family. You will never involve yourself with us again.
Let's go, everyone. He urged Dad to move.
Right, see you later, Sabrina.
I'll be waiting, Dad. Take care, Mitchell. After seeing them off, I sat down wearily.
Are you okay, Mom?
I'm just so tired. It was a good thing we did the shopping today, huh? Indeed. What a day it had been. It had only been about 6 hours since Mom's call. According to Dad and Mitchell, who returned, Margaret would be detained by the police for a while.
I won't allow bail. Absolutely not.
During a late dinner, Dad spoke with a strained voice.
Since the divorce is finalized, and there's no one from her side to take her in, let's get Margaret tried in court soon.
Eventually, Margaret did receive a prison sentence. After causing her family back home so much pain, leading to the death of one child, and being abandoned by the other, Margaret faced a long and solitary road ahead in life. Sometime later, my parents brought Alice to our home.
"Hey, you've become quite cute."
Alice blushed deeply at Walter's comment.
"Where on earth did you learn to talk like that, huh?"
"Dad, stop, it tickles."
"Stop it."
Walter laughed and played with Mitchell. Alice, watching this new father and son who were not related by blood, looked on in amazement, then turned to gaze at me and Walter.
"Is it really okay to live here, Sabrina?"
Alice slurred the word live here. Adopting her was something I had resolved to do from that moment, believing it was the best course of action. Initially, I thought maybe she could be raised by my parents. However, they felt that back home, she might be burdened by the stigma of being Margaret's child. My parents planned to move closer to me after retirement. Until then, we agreed to travel together on long vacations, settling our plans. Alice seemed to be a bit behind in her studies, making it difficult for her to attend the same school as Walter. Still, we could offer her a much more comfortable life than before. With the source of our troubles gone, all we needed to do was to take our time and work towards happiness. We had plenty of time ahead of us.
"Where are you? Come back home now. The house is a mess." "Excuse me? Who's this? I don't recognize your voice, and I don't know what you're talking about."
I'm Sylvia. I've been a housewife for 3 years since marrying Zach. I like cooking, and I even have a chef's license. I occasionally hold cooking classes using this license, and the classes have become quite popular. Zach is friendly to those around him, but his attitude at home is cold. Zach and I met through a mutual friend and got married after dating for 2 years. Both our families and friends congratulated us, and we were able to have a very memorable wedding. However, since getting married, Zach has become more distant with me, and he would make horrible remarks, leaving me distressed.
"What do you want for dinner tonight?" "Anything's fine."
After breakfast, Zach gave a curt reply and headed to the entrance with his bag.
"I see. Oh, are you going to work now? Have a good day."
Even when I saw him off at the entrance, he would leave without turning back. Did I do something wrong? I would always think about this while cleaning up after breakfast, but time would pass by without an answer. I would finish most of the housework in the morning and start preparing for the cooking class in the afternoon. Holding a cooking class using my qualifications is one of my hobbies, and all the students are lovely people. Today's menu is homemade cheesecake, and I'm planning to make several variations like pistachio and chocolate.
Ah, I forgot to buy it. I still have time to go shopping if I leave now.
I quickly got ready and headed out for some last-minute shopping. At the grocery store, I ran into one of my students.
"Ah, Sylvia, hello. Are you here for today's shopping?"
This woman, Tess, is a young woman who recently joined my cooking class. But perhaps because of her friendly nature, she's adored by the other students like a younger sister.
"Hello. Yes, I forgot to buy something and rushed here."
Is that so? Let me help you. Would it be all right if I come over to your place with you after this?
"Thank you. Yes, let's go back home together."
Awesome! Tess and I finished our shopping and went back home. Afterward, she helped me with the preparations, and we waited for the other students to arrive. In the meantime, we chatted about trivial things and I even gave her advice on her love life.
"My boyfriend is older than me, and we've been dating for over a year, but he's never taken me to his place. I was feeling insecure, but there was no point in doubting him, so I decided to wait for him to invite me. I realized worrying is a waste of time. I understand. I've had my own worries about Zach, but thinking about it doesn't lead to any conclusions, and I'd rather not dwell on it.
Right? It feels more beneficial to do something enjoyable in the meantime.
Indeed. Thank you. I've been a bit troubled lately, but talking to you has cheered me up.
Sighing, I said this, and Tess looked worried for a moment, but then smiled and cheered me up. Meanwhile, the students arrived one by one, and once everyone was there, we started the cooking class.
I'm home.
That evening, while I was preparing dinner, I noticed Zach had come back and went to the entrance to greet him.
Welcome home. Dinner's ready.
Okay. He muttered and went to the bathroom loosening his tie.
Not this again.
I sighed, but remembering my conversation with Tess, I cheered myself up, telling myself that everything was okay.
If you're going to shower, I'll bring you a change of clothes. Please put your laundry in the basket.
I know that without you telling me. Leave me alone.
All right, sorry.
Are we stuck in a rut? His response that he gave me without even looking me in the eye still made me feel lonely. During the meal, we were silent, and he was always looking at the TV or his phone.
How's work been going? Is everything good?
Yes.
I made cheesecake in today's cooking class. Want some after dinner?
No.
By the way, I was thinking of looking at some furniture this weekend. Want to come with me? I have work.
Lately, our mealtime conversations have been like this, lacking any spark. Seeing as we were sitting at the same table, I wish we could have even trivial conversations. The lack of conversation makes it harder to understand Zach's thoughts, adding to my anxiety.
About the next cooking class.
As I began to say, Zach slammed his fork down.
Hey, you're so noisy that I can't hear the TV. Are you trying to annoy me on purpose?
His clearly irritable remark made me a bit nervous.
Who do you think allows you to run a cooking class when you're only good for housework? I'm tired from work and just want some peace at home, so can't you keep quiet?
I was shocked by the words he said as he was glaring at me, but I chose to stay silent to avoid provoking him any further. It was even more hurtful to me that he was glaring at me the first moment our eyes met today.
Good. Don't talk to me.
After that, we had our meal in silence. I couldn't enjoy the dishes that I had taken time to prepare, and time seemed to drag on. A month later, Zach had stopped speaking altogether. He even stopped saying good morning. And he ignored me when I spoke to him. At this point, I desperately wanted to know the reason, but was too scared to ask.
Good morning. Breakfast is ready.
I kept talking to Zach even though I knew I'd be ignored. Maybe he was stressed from something at work. Perhaps he was just lashing out at me because of that stress. I desperately wanted to think positively, hoping maybe this was his way of showing his dependency on me. Otherwise, I felt like my heart would break.
I had cooking class today, but I burnt some food. So I had to remake it. Oh, by the way, our neighbor had her baby safely. I was thinking of getting her a gift soon. Any ideas what would be good? Should we get some new dress shirts soon? One of them got ruined the other day.
Zach's silence had now lasted over 2 months. I was forgetting what his voice sounded like. My heart had already broken. I was starting to wonder if we could even continue as a married couple. But making decisions was difficult without knowing the cause of Zach's current state, leaving me with nothing but loneliness and anxiety about our future. Then, I fell ill and had to go to the hospital. I thought it was just a cold, but the test results came back and they were bad. I was told I needed further examination. They say illness starts with the mind, but could this be it?
You'll need to stay here a few days for more tests, so please get your things ready and come back again.
All right. I received the test results and pondered how to tell Zach. I hoped the detailed examination would turn out fine, but if they find something. My stress only grew on top of an already anxious daily life. Welcome back.
There's something I need to tell you.
I greeted Zach when he came home from work as usual and tried to start a conversation with him, but he still ignored me. But I continued anyway.
I've been feeling unwell and went to the hospital. It turns out I need to go through more detailed tests. I'll have to be hospitalized for a few days. So, you'll need to manage meals and laundry on your own.
Zach's expression did not change even when I talked about my health, and it was clear that he had not stopped what he was doing or showed any signs of being upset.
So, you're ignoring this too? Well, anyway, good luck with that.
I realized that he truly didn't care about me. I had hoped that talking about my health might make him a bit worried, but I was naive. But there was no time to feel sad. Surprisingly, there was a lot to do. Unlike Zach, my students were all worried about me, and their words were so comforting that I couldn't help but shed some tears. Afterward, I went in for my scheduled hospital tests, which unfortunately came back with bad results. I was told surgery was necessary and was given a consent form.
Please have your husband sign this.
The doctor's words felt like a stab in the heart. I was sure he wouldn't even listen, let alone sign this paper. When I asked what to do if Zach couldn't sign it, the doctor said,
"Oh, is your husband away on a business trip? Then your parents can sign it instead."
Hearing that, I decided to ask my parents to sign it if Zach refused. When I returned home after a few days, no housework had been done, the laundry and dishes were piled up. Even the trash from ready-made meals hadn't been taken out. I had suspected as much. Then, as usual, Zach returned home silently and sat down at the table set with dinner. I was nervous.
Welcome back. I was discharged from the hospital today. It must have been tough while I was away, right?
I'm sorry.
So, I need to have surgery, and your signature is required on the consent form. Could you sign it, please? After we finish eating and I clear the table, I'll leave it here for you.
As expected, he kept ignoring me. Feeling frustrated that there was not the slightest sign of concern when he heard about his own wife needing surgery, I decided to take the plunge and ask him why he was behaving like this.
Why are you ignoring me? Did I do something wrong? It's been about 3 months, hasn't it? Please, just tell me why.
Perhaps my emotional outburst was too much, because Zach stood up from his meal halfway through and left the room.
Why?
I collapsed, crying alone. I didn't know what to do anymore. Can we even say that we are a married couple in a situation like this? I couldn't bear such painful circumstances any longer. Maybe I needed to change myself. I tried to reboot my mind, fill it with positive thoughts, and went to sleep. Since the consent form for the surgery needed to be signed, I headed to my parents' house the next day. Zach hadn't signed the consent form I had left on the table. I wasn't expecting much anyway, so I got ready and left the house without any more sadness. Upon reaching my parents' place, they welcomed me with smiles on their faces. Seeing their smiles made me burst into tears, and they hurried to comfort me, patting my back.
What happened?
They asked out of concern, so I decided to tell them about my situation. After hearing my story, my parents were outraged. My father said with a stern expression,
"Get a divorce and come back home right now."
but without knowing the reason, I was unsure how to proceed. My parents then suggested,
"Why not hire a detective agency?"
even if I had no reason to suspect an affair, knowing how he spends his time outside might provide a clue as to why Zach was ignoring me. I accepted my parents' suggestion and decided to have a private detective investigate Zach's activities. The agency agreed to conduct the investigation during my surgery and hospitalization, and they would inform me of the results once my condition stabilized. They were very cooperative and ready to start immediately. Consulting with my parents and the detective agency made me feel a bit relieved from the anxiety I was bearing. My parents, who signed the consent form, also accompanied me to the hospital on the day of my surgery and waited outside the operating room the entire time. Thanks to them, I was able to undergo the surgery with peace of mind. The surgery was successful, and I had no problems with my recovery. When my condition stabilized, I contacted the detective agency, and they told me they were ready to report the results. I decided to hear the report in the hospital with my parents present.
"We found that your husband is having an affair."
Hearing those words made my heart race. I started to tremble slightly. My mother said,
"You don't have to force yourself to hear this."
but I insisted I wanted to know the details.
"You have your condition to worry about, so if you would like us to stop at any point, please let us know. For now, we'll continue. The woman is a staff member at the cafe on the first floor of your husband's company building. They met there and seemed to have lunch together almost every day. They would often meet after work and then head to a hotel. We were able to obtain evidence quickly. Their relationship has been rumored within your husband's workplace for over a year now." "Over a year? We've only been married for 3 years. So he started having an affair less than 2 years into our marriage?" "It seems so." "When did you first notice a change in your husband's attitude?"
Upon being asked by the detective, I realized that indeed, Zach became colder a year after our marriage. I never thought it could be an affair, but now, looking back, the timing makes sense.
"Everything was normal until a year into our marriage, but then he started acting cold towards me."
So he had been seeing someone since then.
I feel so foolish for not realizing it.
I tried to laugh it off, not wanting to worry my parents further, but I couldn't hold back my tears. My parents who were beside me looked very sad.
"We understand how you feel. With this much evidence, you can file for divorce and claim alimony. It's not my place to say, but you don't need to put up with this anymore. Ultimately, it's up to you."
Hearing the detective's words, I looked at the photos again. I saw Zach smiling in them. It was a smile I hadn't seen at home for so long, one I used to adore. But it was directed at another woman, not me, yet, upon closer inspection, I recognized the face.
"Wait. Tess?"
I hadn't noticed her when I first saw the photo because I was focused on Zach, but the woman with him was indeed Tess.
"You've got to be kidding. Wait, you know this woman?"
Yes. She's a student in my cooking class.
I had no idea Tess was Zach's mistress. "So, you knew her. It breaks my heart to deliver such cruel news. But, it seems this woman didn't know your husband was married. She didn't know she was the mistress."
Hearing this, I remembered Tess's confidences to me.
Come to think of it, Tess had confided in me that her boyfriend never took her to his place. Well, that makes sense. He couldn't take her home because he's married. We did some digging on her, and she has a good reputation. We didn't realize she was acquainted with you, as your cooking class was closed during our investigation. What are you going to do?"
I found it hard to believe Tess would engage in an affair and felt the need to talk to her. If she was aware of this and was having this relationship regardless, I wanted to hold her accountable. Whether Tess knew or not, I had already decided what to do about Zach.
I'm going to divorce Zach. I want to do it right now. And I want to talk to Tess. I'll decide how to deal with her after our conversation.
My parents agreed with my decision, urging me to come back home right away. The detective also offered a supportive smile, saying they would help however they could. I felt I had allies. This solidified my resolve. After being discharged, I waited until Zach was at work to pack my things. The house was in a terrible mess after my long absence. But that no longer mattered to me. I packed the essentials, left the filled-out divorce papers on the table, and left the house. I got into my parents' car, which was waiting outside, and went back to their home. 2 weeks later, Zach called. Seeing his name on my phone, my heart raced, and my hands shook, but my decision to divorce was unwavering, so I answered.
Hello? Where are you? Come back home now. The house is a mess.
Zach's voice, which I hadn't heard in a while, was rough.
Excuse me? Who's this? I don't recognize your voice, and I don't know what you're talking about.
Zach seemed even more infuriated by my response.
Don't mess with me. Leaving divorce papers like that.
I'm busy right now, so please don't bother me.
Are you making a fool of me? Come back and clean up this place.
I don't know who this is, so I'll be hanging up now. I immediately ended the call. I used to want to talk with him and hear his voice, but now even the sound of his voice was repulsive. After hanging up on Zach, I exhaled deeply, relieved. At that moment, my mom knocked on the door and, with a smile, suggested we have some tea. While having tea with my parents, the landline rang, and it was Zach again.
Oh, Zach, it's been a while. What's the matter?
That's what mothers are for. She was calm as ever. My father was beside her looking furious.
Vanessa, it's been a while. Is Sylvia there by any chance?
Yes, she's here.
I thought so. Actually, Sylvia left divorce papers and left. I'd like to talk with her, but it's not working out. Could you ask her to come back home?
Yes, I know about the divorce papers. Could you sign them and submit them? What? What are you talking about? I don't want a divorce. And Sylvia is the one at fault here. She left without getting any housework done. Don't you think she's a failure as a housewife? Not at all. But if you think so, that's a good enough reason to sign the divorce papers, isn't it?
Well, if she would just come back and take care of the house, I'd give her another chance.
You're rotten to the core.
Excuse me? Vanessa?
From what you're saying, it sounds like you just need someone to do the household chores, right? Then why don't you hire a housekeeper? What were you thinking, not signing the consent form for surgery, not being there for the procedure, and not visiting her at all during her stay? A husband who doesn't support his wife during hard times is not even a husband, he's a disgusting human being.
It's because I was busy with work.
No, it's because you found it bothersome, right? And now, because there's no one to do the chores, your house has turned into a garbage dump, and that's why you're looking for Sylvia? Sylvia isn't a maid. Enough is enough. Hey, you! How dare you call us?
Anton.
Letting my daughter marry you was the biggest mistake of my life. What do you think my daughter is? Just submit the divorce papers already. And never come near my daughter again. Got it?
My father seemed unable to contain his anger any longer, and my mother had to forcibly take the phone away from him as he yelled. Then he slammed down the receiver with such force that it looked like it might break.
Anton! You're going to break the phone!
Oh, sorry. I got carried away. Watching my parents' interaction, I couldn't help but laugh. After that, Zach called many times. Just seeing his name on the phone display made me sick.
Hello?
It's me. When are you coming back?
He must have forgotten the conversation with my parents. Zach was contacting me like nothing had happened.
Excuse me, who is this? Stop playing around. I'm trying to reach out to you here. Didn't you want to talk to me?
The Zach whom I know seems to have lost his ability to speak, so I don't recognize your voice. Besides, I have no interest in talking to such a person anyway.
Playing hard to get, huh? I'll talk if you come back now. Hurry up and take care of this place.
These words made me understand it again. That Zach was indeed looking down on me. I was seen as a mere housekeeper, not his wife.
No need to talk, then you. Enough already. How much more trouble do you want to cause? Keep up this lazy attitude, and I'll really divorce you. You depend on me too much to get by without me.
I'm glad to hear you're willing to agree to the divorce. I realized I couldn't harbor any affection for Zach anymore. I just wanted the divorce to be finalized. As soon as possible.
What? Have you finally lost your mind? You can't live without me.
I wondered why I ever married such a person. I couldn't even remember what I used to like about him.
You were better when you were silent. If all you can do is say such things, maybe it's best if your mouth gets sewn shut. Goodbye.
I wished he would just be indifferent and sign the divorce papers already. It seemed like this troublesome situation would continue a bit longer. And today, I was supposed to talk to Tess. This matter was also important. I got ready and headed to the meeting place with Tess.
Sylvia!
Seeing me, Tess waved with a smile. It didn't seem like she knew about the situation.
Sorry to keep you waiting. It's been a while. Yes, it's been a while. I'm so happy to see you. How have you been? Are you okay?
Tess, whom I hadn't seen since the last cooking class, was concerned about my health.
Thank you. Things have settled down now. Though I still need to go for regular checkups. That's good to hear. But don't let your guard down, okay? So, you mentioned you wanted to talk today. What's up?
We entered a cafe and ordered drinks. And then I got to the main topic. So, Tess, you talked to me about your boyfriend before, right? His name isn't Zach, is it? When I asked, Tess looked surprised.
Yes. You know Zach? That's a surprise.
Tess's eyes widened.
Know him? He's my husband.
When I said that, Tess froze. An uncomfortable silence followed, and I could see Tess's hand trembling slightly as she held her drink.
What? Husband? Zach is? What? Sylvia's.
Tess seemed confused. From her reaction, it was clear she had no idea.
So you really didn't know? I only recently found out that Zach was having an affair too.
Tess's face turned increasingly pale hearing the word affair.
Affair. I was having an affair. But it might just be someone with the same name, not the same person.
I placed a photo in front of Tess. Tess hesitantly took it, and upon seeing the photo, she started crying. I was deceived. This is the worst. Sylvia. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't feel anger towards Tess, who burst into tears. Instead, my anger towards Zach was about to explode.
It's okay, Tess. You didn't know anything, and I don't blame you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I thought we needed to clear things up. I'm sorry.
I apologized while comforting Tess, who was sobbing. I knew it would hurt her. But if she had known the truth and acted indifferently, I would have wanted to blame her.
I'm thinking of getting a divorce. What about you?
I'll break up with him too. This cleared up my suspicions. Sylvia, I'm sorry even though I had no idea. You must have been hurt so badly. I'm really sorry. Seeing Tess crying as she apologized, I started to shed tears too. After a while, Tess calmed down, and we decided to talk about the future.
I'm planning to file for divorce and claim alimony from Zach. Don't worry, I won't ask for any compensation from you.
Sylvia. Thank you. Even though I'm in a position where I should be taking responsibility too. I'll break up with Zach too. Actually, I'm furious right now. Sylvia, I know it's weird for me to say this, but I'll provide plenty of evidence of the affair. Let's teach him a lesson. Seeing Tess's willingness to help me, despite being hurt herself, made me a bit envious of her. I put down my drink and reached out my hand to Tess.
Thank you. Let's do this. Yes.
Tess grasped my hand, and we exchanged a firm handshake. The next day, I decided to visit a lawyer's office just in case. If Zach didn't agree to the divorce, it might go to mediation. I wanted to be prepared for that possibility. After consulting with the lawyer with the evidence provided by the detective agency and Tess, the lawyer suggested that the evidence was sufficient and recommended sending a demand letter to proceed with the divorce. I agreed to proceed in that direction. 3 days later, Zach called as usual. I had been ignoring his calls, but this time it felt like the right moment to answer.
Hello? Finally, you answered my call. You've been ignoring me this whole time. I told you I don't want a divorce, so you have no choice but to come back. The house is a mess. We're getting complaints from the neighbors. It's all your fault. Come back now.
It seemed like he hadn't received the demand letter yet. Well, I guess it wouldn't be delivered so quickly anyway. I thought as I replied.
I told you I want a divorce. Stop saying things that are convenient for you after ignoring me for so long. Besides, there are other things you're hiding from me.
Hearing this, Zach began to falter.
What? What do you mean by things I'm hiding? I haven't done anything wrong.
Zach?
It's been a while.
While Zach was trying to say something, I passed the phone to Tess. At that moment, I was having tea with Tess, so I decided to let her take the call.
What? Tess? Is that you?
Zach's confusion was evident even over the phone.
Yep. Tess here. I was just having tea with your wife. What? My wife? What are you talking about, Tess? How pathetic. I know everything now. You've been deceiving me. And Sylvia told me about how you ignored her and about her illness. You really are the worst. It makes me sick to think that I ever dated a guy like you. Never show up in front of me again. Don't even contact me. Go to hell, you idiot.
Tess's expression and tone were unlike anything I'd seen or heard from her before. I thought to myself calmly about how scary Tess could be when she gets angry.
What's with you, Tess? You're different. Come on, be upbeat and positive like you always are. Shut up. Bye.
Then, Tess returned to her usual smiling, cute self and handed back the phone.
Here you go, Sylvia.
She had such a refreshed look on her face. Even I felt a bit better listening to her.
That's how it is. You understand, right? My lawyer should be in touch with you soon.
Hearing this, Zach's voice trembled, unable to hide his panic.
Your lawyer? No, you've got it all wrong, Sylvia. Tess was just, well, a fling. You know, men often cheat. It was just something I tried out. Obviously, Sylvia, you're the most important one. And look, I wasn't ignoring you. Oh yeah, I've been having trouble with my hearing, so sometimes I couldn't catch what you were saying, so I might not have heard about the hospital thing or whatever. Tess and I are over now. You're the only one for me, Sylvia.
The more I listened, the more repulsed I felt by his words. And his shallow excuses almost made me press the button to end the call.
You know what? Being worthy as a man is about having the guts to see things through until the end, and being dependable. This means you, who lack all these qualities, are not even worthy enough to cheat on me. Well, I think anyone who cheats on their partner is a good-for-nothing guy anyway. Oh, don't contact me directly anymore. You'll have to go through my lawyer from now on. I mean, you're really disgusting. I don't want anything to do with you. Goodbye. Wait. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I won't ignore you anymore, and I'll stop cheating on you.
He continued saying something, but I had conveyed what needed to be said, so I hung up. I didn't want anything else from him. I looked at Tess, and she was smiling.
That was refreshing, wasn't it? Sylvia. Indeed. We're friends, aren't we?
Tess seemed on the verge of tears after hearing that. Oh, Sylvia. I'm sorry about all this. I really love you, Sylvia. Even though that man brings me painful memories, I'm grateful I could become friends with you through all this. Tess, who embraced me while saying this, is still adorable to me, like a little sister. I went back home and told my parents what had happened. They seemed relieved. I apologized for making them worried about me, and they told me it's normal for family to worry about each other. After the demand letter was delivered, Zach had no choice but to reluctantly agree to the divorce. With overwhelming evidence, he couldn't make excuses and had to agree to pay the alimony. When the lawyer visited his house, it was reportedly in a terrible state, filled with garbage and a bad smell. So, the conversation was held outside. Apparently, there was a neighbor who overheard this, and since she was notorious for being a gossiper, word soon spread in the neighborhood. Zach returned to his parents' house when it became too difficult for him to stay there. Zach's parents contacted me later to apologize, and I learned that Zach had quit his job and spent his days cooped up in his parents' house. As for me, after the divorce was finalized, I reopened my cooking class and am enjoying my life. Tess quit her job at the cafe and decided to open her own shop. It had been a dream of hers for a long time. She even asked me to work with her, and I'm actively considering it. Looking back, I have no idea why I put up with such a life before. Part of me was afraid to make the choice to divorce, but I sometimes think that if I had known how stress-free and happy I would be when I finally did, I would have divorced sooner. Spending time with my parents now brings lots of laughter and joy every day.
You're the famous photographer. Are you shooting today?
The woman in front of me is staring at me excitedly. We met on the beach during clamming season, and she seems to know that I'm a photographer. Despite her family of 3 playing in the sand, she listens intently to what I have to say. It's a poignant reminder of my early days as a rookie, when people didn't believe I was a photographer and I barely got any assignments. When I tell her that I'm here for a photo shoot, she eagerly volunteers to be the subject. "But could you please not show my child's face?" She says this, pointing to a cute little girl. The girl, about 2 or 3 years old, looks at us with her big, adorable eyes wide open. Of course. "And what about Dad?" When I ask, the father looks pale, glancing around uncertainly and giving vague replies. I guess that's understandable. After all, the dad building a sandcastle with the girl is my husband. My name is Katie. I'm a 30-year-old freelance photographer. For work, I'm often called to school events and weddings in the neighborhood. I capture moments of smiles and friendship, sharing them through my photos. It's not just about taking pictures, but about capturing people's memories and emotions, sharing their happiness. Capturing these joyous moments in people's lives is my job and my passion. But my life's shutter stopped in an instant due to a certain event. My husband, Galton, was a busy businessman. He was involved in the development of leisure facilities and tourist destinations, traveling all over the country. We couldn't spend much time together because of our busy schedules, but the time we did have was special. Even if it was just a little while, the time and smiles with him were what kept me going. I had no intention of quitting my photography.
We'll build our careers while supporting each other.
We promised and got married. That's when I started looking for ways to work from home instead of being out and about for shoots. First, I posted landscape and permitted portraits on social media as part of my portfolio. By showcasing my work in virtual galleries like online photo exhibitions, not only publishers and peers in photography noticed me, but also a wider general audience. This led to a rapid increase in followers. Thanks to social media, I was able to do live streams, talking about my photography and even making some money from it. I would share my photos while explaining the stories and techniques behind them. Communicating through photography was fun and fulfilling. I balanced outdoor shooting with my social media presence, steadily growing my follower base. Galton was still constantly on business trips. Inevitably, I spent a lot of time with my in-laws, who thankfully took an interest in my social media activities. As I taught them how to use smartphones and social media, we grew closer, and they often tuned into my photos and live streams. Both are wonderful people, and even when Galton was away, I didn't feel lonely and enjoyed fulfilling days. However, there was a significant void in our lives. We couldn't have children. Despite numerous tests, we were unable to conceive. We both wanted kids, so years into our marriage without a child put a strain on us. Initially supportive, Galton grew tired of the financial burden and frequent clinic visits, and I could feel us drifting apart. His involvement in a major project, requiring constant travel, didn't help. His interest shifted from our elusive treatment to his challenging work. He cared less about our childlessness, talking more about work instead. I tried to understand his busyness, but we were emotionally distant.
Yesterday, I had a meeting with a client, and it looks like a new project is starting. I'll be away overnight for a while starting next week.
As he unpacked dirty shirts from his large suitcase, Galton told me this. He had just gotten back, but I quickly started the laundry. Galton wouldn't bother to clean or buy new shirts otherwise.
It's faster and less risky this way,
he would say, but I wanted to save where I could.
So, about the hospital.
That's impossible.
You know I have to be there in person, right?
I can't leave work, so let's skip it next week. I sighed quietly, so Galton wouldn't hear. I had made an appointment, but there was nothing I could do if he was traveling. Galton's actions caused trouble for his company, and it was painful to see the work he was once praised for being overshadowed by his personal life. I never wanted to be a hindrance.
But, as busy as I am, it's tough. Katie, you go out for shoots too, right? Let's both keep up the good work.
Yeah. Take care of yourself, Galton.
I swallowed my words as he casually dismissed the topic. Maybe Galton no longer wanted children. But I was too afraid to ask. Should I accept this silently, or should I bring it up, even indirectly? The uncertainty was unsettling. I was adept at capturing people's joy and sorrow through my camera. Yet now, I was living each day unaware of my own emotions. Slowly, I felt trapped within the frame of my own photographs. One day, a fine white envelope with the logo of a famous resort company arrived at the house. It didn't seem like just any direct mail, so I hastily opened it. Inside was a voucher for a stay at a luxury hotel by the sea. Apparently for 3 people. Why was this sent to me? Feeling a stir in my heart, I quickly went to Galton.
Galton, this arrived. Do you know anything about it?
Of course, I wasn't accusing him of anything. I was careful not to sound mean, just asking naturally. Galton stopped reading his newspaper and looked at me. His expression was blank, but his gaze hardened slightly, almost glaring. I had never been looked at that way before and couldn't hide the sinking feeling in my chest.
That's for a colleague whose plans didn't work out, so it was sent to us. It's nothing strange, so can I have it back?
He reached out his hand. Without saying a word, I handed him the envelope with the tickets, and he snatched it away. But when he saw the address, he looked back at me with clear annoyance.
This is addressed to me. Don't open my stuff without asking.
I was surprised and hurriedly apologized. However, it wasn't unusual for direct mail to come to my busy salesman husband. We usually disposed of the ones that arrived at home, so I was taken aback by his reaction.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was direct mail. I was just checking. You should have asked me since I'm here today.
Galton took the envelope to his room, and I couldn't ask any more about the tickets. Although I didn't fully understand why he needed to get tickets for a colleague, I had to accept his explanation. But then, half a month later, something else happened. In July, just before Independence Day, and when we had a memorial service planned at my in-laws,
I've got a long business trip,
he suddenly said. I was initially speechless.
A business trip?
In my work, I often get requests from families or for landscape photography. But I had taken time off for the memorial service. Freelancers and even regular companies usually have Independence Day off. And so did Galton's company, at least in the past. Galton shrugged slightly and forced a smile.
It just came up suddenly. I have to work without a break. So, can you attend the memorial service for me?
I knew he took pride in his work and had been serious about his career even before our marriage. But increasingly, I found myself doubting the reasons for his work and trips. In the end, he left for work, pulling his favorite suitcase. The news reached my in-laws just in time, and while they were angry at his attitude, they made sure I didn't feel uncomfortable.
We're sorry you cleared your schedule for this. When I see Galton next, I'll give him a stern talking to,
said my MIL, Helen. All I could do was give a vague smile. I was supposed to stay a few days after the service. Galton was their only child, and they didn't want me to leave too soon, so I ended up staying as originally planned. I brought my camera and took pictures of my in-laws doing housework, living their daily life, and even landscapes I don't usually focus on. I occupied my time with shooting plans, but part of me felt the absence of Galton, who should have been there. I decided to go to the beach one station away, both for work and a change of scenery. During the spring and summer holidays, the beach is lively with clam digging, and ideal family groups enjoy their time on the sands. Some people are under colorful beach umbrellas, enjoying walks and sunbathing. I walked along the beach with my camera. Suddenly, I stopped at the sound of a familiar voice, coming from a family building a sandcastle. I was glad I wasn't holding my camera. I would have dropped it at the sight. In the circle was Galton. He was with a young woman and a toddler, building a sandcastle together. They looked like a happy family, gathering white sand and shells. I couldn't believe my eyes. But the hotel voucher that had arrived at home, Galton's frequent long business trips, his indifference, it all piled up like sand before me. It would have been an ideal family scene for a photo assignment. But I couldn't believe my husband was there. The child between them looked about 2 or 3 years old. About the time I started feeling Galton drifting away. He had another family. Though I wasn't sure if the child was his, my instincts as a wife told me there was a blood connection. I felt as if a glass frame inside me had shattered mercilessly. The frame was supposed to hold our happy, smiling faces as a couple. I steeled myself and approached. Not Galton, but the woman. She was wearing a large straw hat and looked surprised when I suddenly spoke to her. I forced a smile and apologized for the abrupt approach. Then, I handed her my business card, explaining that I was a freelance photographer. The card only had my professional name, but it also included my social media contact. She looked at the card with interest, then started searching for me on her mobile phone. In the background, Galton, clearly aware of me, was frozen, staring at a spot on the beach. "Would you mind if I take a photo of your family? I sometimes do live streams showing photography tips."
What? I know Katie. I follow you. You post mobile photography tips, right?
She was excited, not knowing my relation to Galton, happy to be approached by a minor celebrity on social media. I was surprised she was a follower, but she was eager, even for a live stream. I hesitantly asked, and before I could finish,
"Of course."
she was already excitedly agreeing. I felt guilty, like I was deceiving her, but my goal was to document Galton's other family.
"Please teach me some photography tips for moms." "Galton, you're okay with it, right?"
Galton was caught off guard. Stammering, he tried to avoid looking at me, desperately thinking of an excuse. "We shouldn't, because of the face reveal. I'm a model for brochures, Can you just make sure my child isn't in the frame?" It turned out the other woman, Lisa, was a model I had met through my husband's company's public relations work. Of course, I agreed and adjusted my phone camera to keep the child out of the shot. I quickly set up for a live stream, pretending to teach the mother, with Galton unavoidably in the center of the frame. His forced smile was interpreted positively by viewers, quickly spreading as "cute nervous dad." After the stream, I thanked them and left. But within minutes, Galton caught up with me, leaving Lisa and the child behind. I asked him bluntly,
"What are you trying to do?"
He remained silent, looking annoyed. He probably felt awkward with Lisa and came to me as an escape. I wonder what his intentions were in stopping me. Finally, he spoke heavily.
"Katie, understand me." What's there to understand without a proper explanation? It's clear enough if you look.
Look, I couldn't help it. I had a child with her before I could with you. It's fine. Lisa's family is wealthy, she doesn't need me to marry her," Galton confessed, his defiance revealing the truth. It seemed unlikely that a young woman who got pregnant would say something so convenient. Probably, Lisa suspected he was married.
I wanted a child. But you couldn't have one. Lisa is nice, and the kid is cute, like her. But it doesn't mean I hate you or don't want to live with you.
His contradictory words left me holding my aching head. Apparently, he wanted to maintain the status quo.
I won't bother you. This situation is perfect for me.
Isn't this good enough? How could it be? I should have argued back. But I was so overwhelmed I lost my voice. In my silence, he sighed in victory and was about to leave. But someone unexpected arrived. It was my in-laws.
Galton. Who are that woman and child?
My Fael, Nathan, red-faced, confronted him. Galton flinched at their sudden appearance.
Why? We saw the live stream notification. Who's the woman and child if you were on a business trip? Skipping a visit home for some unknown woman and a child.
Without waiting for Nathan, Helen stepped in to defend me, showering Galton with fierce words. I was shocked. They had seen the live stream and realized something was wrong. They were stunned to see Galton as a husband with an unfamiliar woman and had rushed over. Confronted by his parents, Galton had to confess everything about Lisa and the child.
Ungrateful child.
He received a strong slap from Helen. Nathan glared at Galton with a look so fierce, I thought he might have punched him if Helen hadn't acted first. My in-laws left Galton behind and came to take me away. Following their apologies and strong encouragement, I decided to divorce. After uncovering evidence of Galton's affair with Lisa, his mistress, the matter was initially settled with a compensation agreement. However, as the divorce proceedings and investigations progressed, various facts came to light. Firstly, it was revealed that Lisa indeed knew Galton was married. Considering she agreed to continue the relationship despite being pregnant, it seemed she had prepared herself for being involved with a married man. Her motivation wasn't just financial, she likely wanted to keep Galton as long as possible. However, she genuinely didn't know that I was his wife and, upon realizing she was following me, blocked all my social media accounts. She angrily started posting on various forums, but this only resulted in more sympathy for me, as she publicly exposed herself as the mistress. It caused trouble in her own family, leading to her being nearly kicked out of her home. Desperately, she even tried to move into my former in-laws' house after I left. But they firmly refused her entry. Next, Galton's secrets began to unravel. During the compensation claim investigations, numerous women and men associated with him came to light. It turned out he had multiple affairs during his business trips, involving repeated liaisons with several women, some of whom were engaged or married. I decided to send out the data from that live stream. A little investigation would reveal that I, his lawful wife, was broadcasting, and the people in the frame were his mistress and their child. As a result, women deceived into thinking he was single, and husbands who felt their wives were stolen, were inflamed with anger and confronted Galton. He found himself facing lawsuits from every direction, with no choice but to accept them all. As more revelations about Galton emerged, Lisa, to everyone's surprise, fled with their child. Clearly out of love, she chose to escape her relationship with him. Lisa's social media uproar eventually settled down, and as her accounts disappeared, I decided to let her go. But considering her nature of boasting about affairs on social media, it was unlikely she would just vanish. True to form, Lisa started using an entirely different account. However, her posts playing the tragic heroine were quickly identified, attracting a wave of criticism. She would delete her account when things got tough, only to reappear under a new one, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Abandoned even by Lisa, Galton's last resort was to turn to his in-laws, but they were enraged upon learning of his multiple affairs. Without any apologies and simply pleading for help, his parents decided to sever ties with their son. Following the scandal, Galton was burdened with substantial compensation payments. As the legal proceedings progressed, inquiries from his mistresses and their husbands flooded his company, complicating the situation even further. Moreover, this wasn't the worst outcome. The unprecedented scandal of his affair and child being exposed on social media was disastrous. The fact that the reveal happened during a business trip made the information spread rapidly, and the company's facilities and reviews were flooded with shocked and angry comments. The fallout from the scandal spread internally and externally, diminishing the company's trust. The executives, feeling a crisis, hastily strategized communication plans, consulting with experts due to their lack of experience in handling such situations. Meanwhile, they strictly instructed employees to provide accurate information to quell the chaos. Inquiries and condemnations from inside and outside the company poured in, and Galton's reputation plummeted. He became an outcast at work, completely isolated. Amidst the uncomfortable atmosphere, he was soon asked to resign and had to look for a new job. Originally proficient and successful in sales, he was favored by an older demographic who didn't use social media and quickly found new employment. However, his nature didn't change. Within half a year, he was involved in new scandals, such as pursuing his manager's wife and attempting to charge a shabby motel stay as a business expense. He was fired, joined new companies, and was repeatedly dismissed for causing turmoil in personal relationships. Now, he seems to be perpetually bouncing from job to job within the industry. Meanwhile, I've maintained a relationship with my former in-laws after the divorce. They've been considerate, allowing me to live peacefully. Their support was crucial for me to move on and start anew after ending my relationship with Galton. Following the divorce, I struggled with photographing children, finding it painful. My in-laws, despite being betrayed by their son, strived to present a united front, supporting me. They helped me believe that my relationship with Galton wasn't everything and that I could trust again. One day, I captured a photo of them talking peacefully. I plan to feature this photo in my upcoming online exhibition as the main piece. Although they were quite shy about it, I believe they'll be happy with it in the end. Louis' house is ours now. Get out. After Louis, my father-in-law, passed away, my husband Dennis started claiming my childhood home for himself and his parents, saying things out of turn. Don't you guys know? Hearing Dennis' shallow words made me go beyond dismay to laughter. My retaliation against Dennis, who had looked down on me, sent his family to rock bottom. I am Madonna. I lived with my husband Dennis and my father Louis. My mother passed away when I was in high school, and afterward, my father raised me with a lot of love. I love my father dearly. When my father became elderly, over 70, and I was worried about him, Dennis readily agreed to live together in my childhood home. Are you sure this is okay? I can manage on my own, you know. My father worriedly said to me. What he was talking about was living together with me and Dennis. Recently, when I suggested to my father that I wanted to live together, he initially looked happy but then became concerned quickly. I appreciate it, but won't I be a burden on your and Dennis' life? My father always worried about me first. However, when I told him that I wanted to be with him and that Dennis had agreed, my father smiled and happily agreed. And today is the moving day for me and Dennis. We are unpacking the boxes that the movers brought in. Come on. You're saying it again. I told you before that's what I wanted, right? Yes, Louise. Plus, it's closer to work from here, and it helps me out too. My father smiled a little and said, "I see," when Dennis and I told him this. After unpacking for a while, we went to the living room, where my father had made us warm coffee.
I was about to have coffee when I heard someone coming down the stairs. I thought you might be taking a break, so I prepared some for you and Dennis as well.
Tired, Dennis and I gratefully accepted and took a break, chatting with my father. Watching us, I felt our future life would be more enjoyable than before, which made me happy. After resting for a while, Dennis and I went back to our room to continue unpacking. Rolling up our sleeves, we motivated ourselves to push a little further.
Hey, you can quit your job if you want. Stay by Louis' side.
While working, Dennis made an unexpected suggestion. I stopped, surprised.
What? What do you mean? Because, by living here, we've reduced the rent we used to pay. So, you could quit your job and take care of Luis, talk to him. It'd give you peace of mind, right?
Currently, Dennis and I both work, and I handle the household chores. Dennis helps with the chores occasionally, but it's been quite busy nonetheless. I was a bit troubled by Dennis' suggestion and told him I'd think about it. Indeed, having more time to be with my father was appealing. And the thought of being able to focus on household chores seemed to lessen my burden. Dennis' proposal was attractive, but it meant relying on his income, which worried me about becoming a burden on him. Dennis had already agreed to the cohabitation. Could I rely on him even more? With our living situation changing from today, I decided to keep living as we had been for the time being. Dennis told me not to push myself, but the cohabitation was my suggestion. I felt I couldn't always depend on Dennis. A month passed.
Hey, maybe you should quit your job for Louis' sake after all?
When Dennis suggested this again, I was already considering it might be better. Living together had actually lessened my burden, not increased it. Because my father was helping with the household chores. Thinking of preparing dinner on my way home, I'd find my father had already cooked or cleaned, which seemed to increase his burden instead. Feeling guilty about this situation, I had been contemplating quitting my job.
Yeah. Maybe I will. I'm sorry to put the financial burden on you, Dennis.
What are you talking about? Don't worry about it. With that, I decided to quit my job. When I told my father, he said he'd take care of the household chores and that I should not worry about working, but when I insisted that I wanted to do the chores, he thought for a moment and then agreed. Since quitting my job, I've been able to focus on household duties. Spending more time with my father has enriched our days. However, things gradually began to change. Welcome back. You must be tired today. Is dinner ready? Dennis started coming home late, and with my father already asleep by the time he returned, the three of us had fewer meals together. Today, I was watching TV with Dad and... Can you be quiet while eating? Oh, sorry. Dennis is as kind as ever when my father is around, but lately, he's become very cold when it's just the two of us. Thinking I might be burdening him since I quit my job, all I can do is apologize. After finishing his meal, Dennis gets up to prepare his usual after-dinner drink, then suddenly decides to leave the dining room. Where are you going? What about your drink? Shower. He says curtly and leaves, closing the door roughly behind him. Not knowing if he's just in a bad mood or tired, these days have been so continuous that I can't help but sigh. The next day, as usual, I wait for Dennis to come home after my father has gone to bed, but he doesn't return even after midnight. Worried, I try calling him, but he doesn't answer his phone. Just as I'm getting really concerned, a message arrives. What? Even the text feels cold. I sigh again, relieved that he's at least safe.
Still at work? I was worried because it's so late.
He responds quickly. On a business trip. The reply is short. But from this, I understand he won't be coming home today. I hadn't heard anything about a business trip and think he should have told me earlier, but I also worry that mentioning it might upset him more. So, you're on a business trip. Got it. When will you be back? I send this, but get no reply. After that, Dennis's business trips seem to increase, without him telling me when he'd be leaving or when he'd return. My father worries too, and when Dennis is home, asks him if everything is okay.
I'm totally fine. Just working hard for the family.
Dennis responds with a bright smile he no longer shows me. Seeing this, I wonder if he's upset with me. I try to talk about it, but he dismisses it, saying he's just busy or tired, and we never really have a proper discussion. Eventually, Dennis hardly comes home at all. Suspicious, I start to wonder if he's having an affair when suddenly, I receive a message from Dennis's mother, Cecile, after a long time.
Give me Dennis's company address.
The message is blunt, without any greeting. Since the beginning of our marriage, my in-laws haven't liked me, often making snide remarks or harassing me, so over time, I've distanced myself from them, although Dennis understood and it never affected our relationship. But we never attempted to mend things, so the relationship remained distant. Puzzled by Cecile's abrupt message, I reply.
It's been a while. May I ask why you need Dennis's company address?
This seems to upset her, as she calls me angry.
Hello. It's been a while.
It's not been a while.
You've had Dennis looking after your father and quit your job to do no housework at all. What's this about? Because of you, Dennis has been staying at our house. He forgot something today and was going to drop it off at his company. And you're acting like this. Unbelievable. Give me the address now. Also, from now on, Dennis will be living with us.
Stunned by Cecile's barrage, I learned Dennis had been going back to his parents' house on the days he said he was on business trips. Shocked that he had told his parents such things, I feel betrayed. Despite him saying it was okay for me to quit my job and to stay by my father's side, realizing Dennis's true feelings was heartbreaking. Unable to argue, I give Cecile Dennis's company address and hang up. Trying to calm down, I'm making coffee in the living room when my father comes in. Smiling as usual, I ask him, "Want some coffee?" He looks at me closely, smiles, and says,
I might just take you up on that.
As we sit drinking coffee together, my father starts to talk.
When your mom and I were younger, we used to argue a lot. Misunderstandings, miscommunications, but we always resolved them by talking honestly. Maybe couples who can argue and fix their relationship are better off, understanding each other more deeply and getting along better.
Listening to my father, it feels like he sees right through me. His words resonate with me, and I decide to have a proper talk with Dennis. Yeah. Thanks, Dad. When I told my father, he laughed. Then, after receiving a message from Cecile, I sent Dennis a message saying I wanted to talk. However, Dennis replied that it was too much trouble, making me sigh. Who's making it troublesome? Anger towards Dennis started to bubble up. I wanted to reply impulsively, but I took a deep breath to remain calm. Maybe that triggered it, but Dennis stopped giving me money for living expenses. He wouldn't answer my calls anymore, and my messages about the living expenses were ignored too. His selfish actions were making my love for him fade. Was there any point in staying married? The thought of divorce crossed my mind. I was disillusioned with Dennis for being so irresponsible and selfish. But not wanting to worry my father further, I put the thought of divorce on hold and decided to use my savings from before I was married to get by. I had gotten used to life without Dennis, enjoying my days with my father. Then one day, my father collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, where I was told he didn't have long left. I broke down crying there, unable to comprehend the doctors' and nurses' words. When I went to my father's room, he was conscious, forcing a smile and apologizing for worrying me. I took his hand, trying my best to smile back despite my swollen eyes.
What kind of face is that?
My father laughed, looking sad, making me feel like crying again. Since my father would be hospitalized, I went home to prepare some changes of clothes. Alone at home, I started crying again. The house I grew up in, filled with too many memories, felt unbearable to be in alone. While I was crying, my phone rang. Thinking it was the hospital, I checked to find a message from Dennis.
We live separately now. Take care of your own living expenses. Why don't you use your father's pension?
The moment I read it, I threw my phone in anger. That was the moment my feelings for Dennis completely vanished. Shaking with anger and sorrow, I tried to calm down, wondering what my father would think of me now. Somewhat calmer, I washed my face and finished preparing to go back to the hospital. Just then, the mail arrived with news that seemed like a blessing to me at that moment. After seeing it, I firmed up my resolve, left the documents at home, and headed to the hospital. My father's condition worsened, and I realized our goodbye was near. I spent my days at the hospital laughing and talking with my father, and crying when I returned home. Eventually, my father passed away peacefully. I was able to watch his final moments as if he was sleeping peacefully. I was devastated but also grateful for everything he had left me. With my relatives' support, we managed to hold the funeral without issue, but Dennis and his parents never showed up. I hadn't informed them of my father's death, so I had no expectations. However, Dennis showed up days after finishing my father's posthumous affairs, nonchalantly with a lot of baggage.
Long time no see. Luis passed away?
Seeing Dennis, I felt a rush of anger, but managed to keep my composure.
What do you want? What's with the baggage?
No way to greet, huh? Isn't it obvious? Your husband is back.
Also, this is my parents' stuff. Excuse me?
Hearing the word husband from Dennis was extremely unpleasant. I couldn't believe someone who had left on his own, stopped contributing to our living expenses, and lived as he pleased dared to refer to himself as my husband.
You were waiting for me, right? No job, struggling with living expenses, and having to take care of your father alone. Speechless with joy? Or rather, you fell for my plan.
Dennis mentioned a plan that caught my attention, and I asked what he meant. The unbelievable response came back.
Luis moving in? I hated that idea. Living with Luis? You must be joking. But if I said that, you might consider divorce. And if we divorced, I wouldn't get this house. So, I moved in with the act of a loving husband, made you jobless, to ensure you and Luis would depend on me. That way, this house would become mine.
Hearing this, I found myself glaring at Dennis unconsciously. This is not something a normal person would think of. The shame of having married such a person, and the overwhelming guilt towards my father made me tremble with frustration.
You say that yet you leave and stop providing for us. Isn't that contradictory?
At that, Dennis began scratching his head, looking annoyed.
Yeah, I reached my limit of patience. I never thought I'd be such a short-tempered man. But I thought you wouldn't have the courage to divorce, so my plan would still succeed even without me.
His smirk made me wonder what I ever saw in him. I don't want to see his face or hear his voice anymore. Dennis had become physically repulsive to me.
And so, my plan succeeded. This house might be old, but it's spacious and in a good location. It'll be worth a lot when sold. From today, I'll live here with my parents.
It's rare to find someone so selfish. He must have never learned about morality. Well, considering his parents, it's not surprising. As I stood there in silent disbelief, Dennis, thinking I was shocked, added insult to injury.
I'll take Luis's house. Get out.
Watching the in-laws' belongings being moved in, I realized Dennis had no grasp of our situation. Dennis looked down on me with disdain. After his appalling comments about my father, I couldn't let this go. I found myself unable to hold back laughter at Dennis's ridiculous statements. Surprised by my sudden laughter, Dennis looked puzzled.
Have you lost your mind? That's my line.
The thought of confronting him with reality made me laugh uncontrollably. As Dennis began to rage, I ignored him and stated the facts.
Do you guys not know? This is my house. It will never be yours.
My words left Dennis frozen, and I went for the kill.
Besides, you and I are strangers now. Haven't you heard from Cecile?
Laughing, I watched as Dennis was left speechless, and then began to make a call. It seemed he was calling Cecile.
Mom? Madonna's saying something nonsensical. We're not divorced, right? She said you should know. What's that about? What? You sent it? What have you done?
Listening to Dennis, it seemed he was beginning to grasp the situation. Dennis ended the call with a twisted face.
You filed for divorce? Yes. Exactly. The day your father was hospitalized. Cecile sent the completed divorce papers by mail, and I was so happy I sent them back the next day. Cecile did something nice. Darn. Even if it arrived, you shouldn't have sent it. Mom said to write it just in case. I never intended to divorce.
Well, you filled it out, didn't you?
I don't know about your intentions. I just granted your wish for divorce. You should be thanking me.
Seeing Dennis so frustrated was satisfying. Cecile must have sent it to harass me, but to me, contemplating divorce that day, the arrival of the divorce papers was great news. Afterward, Dennis, panicking about property division and claiming rights to the house because he moved in with my father, was easily rebutted. Knowing there wasn't much to divide since the property wasn't valuable and was in my father's name at the time of the divorce, I explained it wasn't subject to division. When Dennis desperately claimed my personal savings from before our marriage should be divided, I clarified that too was not subject to division. Dennis turned pale, unable to respond, his mouth moving like a goldfish. I was tempted to mock him further, but I composed myself for a more mature response.
Can we stop this now? Bringing so much stuff into someone else's house is troublesome, and frankly, it's trespassing. If you plan to stay any longer, I'll have to call the police.
When I said that, Dennis hurriedly started moving his things out and left as if fleeing. I closed the door and, looking at a photo of my parents, murmured,
"This is for the best. I'll become stronger, so watch over me."
Thinking about whether my parents had reunited in heaven eased the sadness, and strangely, the loneliness dissipated. I gathered my resolve and started looking for a job. Just then, a friend contacted me. They had heard I was job hunting and reached out. They had a job in mind that suited my expertise. I was introduced and interviewed by HR, and was hired on the spot. A few days later, Dennis sent a message.
I was stubborn last time, my bad. I actually wanted to make things right with you, that's why I came to the house.
Knowing it was all lies, I struggled with how to respond, eventually finding it too bothersome and choosing to ignore it. Despite my silence, a series of poem-like messages began to arrive.
We were like the sun and moon back then. I reached out but couldn't touch you. Those days of struggle are now memories. We can be within reach now, right? I can't go on without your love. Won't you give me that glowing love once more? My life is yours. You mean everything to me. Our love is eternal. No matter where, I will continue to love you. Your heart is where I belong.
Each time a poem arrived, I showed it to my colleagues, wondering if it could be used for work. I work in editing. Sometimes, phrases like these can be useful.
Ah. Here comes the emotionally unstable stalker. Great material when I'm out of ideas.
Dennis has become a source of content, unbeknownst to him. But his messages only fill me with disgust, so I don't reply. Then one day, the doorbell rang. Peeking through the peephole, I saw Dennis. Thinking he had finally escalated to a direct approach, I called the police immediately.
Hey! I know you're there. I can see your car. Please, just hear me out. I'm really in trouble here. There was talk of moving into this house, and my parents seem to have sold our family home. I have nowhere to go. Please help.
Despite his pleas from outside, it's a stranger's problem to me, not mine. Didn't he realize this wasn't his home when he didn't retract his claim after finding out? The messages sent showed he hadn't given up, but his and his family's naivety was astonishing. Soon, the police arrived and had to persuade Dennis, who resisted fiercely and was eventually taken away. Messages continued to flood in, and when I ignored them, my in-laws began contacting me. Initially, they called, but as I ignored them, they resorted to messaging.
How could you know we're in trouble and not help? Call us back immediately. Why not have a proper discussion once?
We were family, after all. Isn't this too cold?
We had to sell our home because of you, now living in an old apartment. Why won't you vacate the house? You received an inheritance from your father, right?
We quit our jobs, expecting not to struggle. Take responsibility. Herman, my FIL, said this, and it was clear the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Did they really think their decisions would just work out? Their messages were infuriating. How much more could they belittle people? I had planned to ignore them, but ended up blocking Dennis and my in-laws. I considered changing my contact information, but didn't want to go that far because of them. I was at my limit of patience. After blocking them, I hoped for a peaceful life, but my expectations were naive. Later, my former in-laws showed up at my house. As much as I wanted them to stop, being known made such situations inevitable. Yet, leaving this house full of memories was unthinkable.
Come out already! Don't you know we're in trouble? Fix your mood already. I'm saying we should get back together. Ignoring someone in trouble is questionable behavior for anyone.
The doorbell kept ringing. The front door was being pounded on. I had called the police without mercy, but then suddenly, the noise stopped. Curious, I looked through the peephole and saw a man, familiar somehow, arguing with my former in-laws. More than talking, it seemed like a confrontation.
You're causing trouble. Go home, all of you.
The former in-laws were unsettled by the sudden appearance of the man.
What did you say? Who are you, anyway? Could you be the affair partner?
Despite being taken aback, the former in-laws retorted, to which the man responded with a look of disdain.
That kind of thinking is why nobody takes you seriously. Do you see your surroundings? This is a residential area. Look, your disturbance has drawn a crowd. It's really loud.
Although I could only see so much through the peephole, indeed, neighbors had started to gather. This is embarrassing for me too, I sighed. However, realizing their predicament, the former in-laws started panicking, stuttering.
But.
By then, the police had arrived. It seemed one of the officers had been here before, as they recognized Dennis and said,
You again?
Hearing this, the former in-laws' faces turned bright red.
Do you realize how much trouble you're causing? Have some shame,
the man said before leaving. Internally, I thanked him, feeling a bit relieved. Afterwards, the former in-laws were escorted away by the police amidst onlookers, who then dispersed. Hours later, the doorbell rang again, and peering through the peephole, I saw the man who had confronted my former in-laws. Surprised, I hesitated but eventually, cautiously opened the door to find the man smiling at me.
It's been a while. If you were back, you should have told me.
Though the man looked familiar, I couldn't place him until he offered a clue. Can't remember? Well, it has been over 10 years. It's me, Charles. Hearing the name jogged my memory. My childhood friend Charlie, or Charles.
What?
Charlie!
Now that you mention it, I can see the resemblance.
Charles was a childhood friend who lived next door, but we hadn't seen each other since he transferred to a sports-focused elementary school. Remembered, huh? I've moved back home too. So, we're neighbors again. That's amazing. It's been so long. And thank you for earlier. You really helped me out. As I expressed my gratitude again, Charles laughed.
Don't mention it,
he said, making me smile in appreciation. Caught up in nostalgia, our conversation grew lively, and I shared the recent events with him. Charles offered his support anytime, giving me a strong ally. Upon learning of my father's passing, Charles brought flowers as a tribute. He remembered my father, even though we were just kids back then. I was delighted to have someone with shared memories in my life. Later, I received a letter from a lawyer in the mail. Without any clue what it was about, I opened the envelope to find several papers inside. The documents claimed I had committed adultery during my marriage and demanded compensation.
What is this?
I wondered, noticing an unread message on my phone. It was a message from an address I didn't recognize. The message, from an unknown address, stated that my ex-husband, Dennis, had filed a lawsuit for adultery during our marriage. It threatened to inform my workplace unless I admitted guilt and settled immediately. Knowing no legitimate lawyer would send such a letter, it was clear this was the work of my former in-laws. The letter's authenticity was doubtful, so I decided to consult a real law firm. A genuine lawyer confirmed the letter was a complete fake. The supposed lawyer's name was unregistered, confirming my suspicions. Though I considered ignoring it, I decided to feign falling for their trick.
I've reviewed the content, but I can't recall any such incident. If you're accusing me of adultery, please provide evidence. You seem, but the emotional damage to Dennis is substantial, and the claim is for compensation for that.
No lawyer would proceed without evidence. It was clear they were operating on scant knowledge.
There's no fact of infidelity, so of course, there's no evidence. You mention emotional damage, but do lawyers act on such baseless claims? Dennis's plight has moved me, and I've taken on your case with the intention of helping. If you show some sincerity, we don't intend to make a big deal out of this.
Quite an emotional lawyer, aren't you?
Just to confirm, though you're probably aware, it's illegal for someone to impersonate a lawyer, with potential jail time or fines depending on the case. You are a real lawyer, right?
After that exchange, the previously prompt replies stopped. Wondering what their next move would be, I received a message.
Of course, I'm real, but I've been persuaded by your passion. We've decided to drop the lawsuit. No, don't bother dropping it on my account. I have no such passion, quite the opposite, in fact. Since you've fabricated this affair, I'm inclined to fight this fully and am considering hiring a lawyer myself. I look forward to seeing you in court.
After my reply, there was no further contact. Though the messages stopped, the former in-laws again made a direct assault, screaming at my front door about how they were wrong and begging me to drop the lawsuit. Awoken by the commotion, I checked the time to find it was past 1 a.m. Frustrated and at my limit, I yelled,
Enough! Stay away from me forever!
As I flung open the door. The former in-laws, having never seen me so enraged, were stunned.
Toxic family. Try anything else and see what happens.
Saying this, I grabbed my father's wooden sword that was by the door. Seeing the sword, the in-laws' faces turned pale, with Dennis muttering an apology.
If you're sorry, then disappear. Don't ever come back.
I yelled even louder, causing Cecile to tear up, looking like she might cry. Then, I saw police car lights approaching, indicating that the neighborhood had called them due to the late-hour disturbance. As they were taken away, Cecile desperately pointed at me, telling the police,
That person! They tried to hit us with a wooden sword.
When the police turned to me, asking if that was true, I explained.
I was just startled by the incessant doorbell ringing and knocking, thinking it was an intruder. I had the wooden sword for self-defense.
The officers seemed convinced. Charles, who had been nearby and witnessed their frequent assaults, vouched for me. His testimony, along with their malicious behavior, led to their swift arrest. It was finally quiet. The next day, encouraged by Charles, I filed a complaint. Given the repeated police incidents, it was smoothly accepted. Charles had noticed the previous day's commotion and had come over, hearing my shouts. He later joked about how terrifying I sounded. Eventually, the former in-laws were issued a restraining order, halting their attacks. Moreover, someone had recorded the commotion and posted it online, leading to neighborhood gossip. Unable to move due to financial constraints, they likely live off the grandparents' pensions. As for me, my relationship with Charles quickly evolved, and after a few months, we started dating following his confession. Spending time with Charles, always making me laugh and showing kindness, felt incredibly fortunate. I'm thankful every day, considering it a blessing from my father.
Really, she should just hurry up and leave this world. She's such a nuisance.
We, the married couple, said about our son's wife whom we disliked. Ever since she started living with us, she kept making snide remarks. Day after day of accumulated stress. I wondered if we had to continue living with her verbal abuse and harassment. Then, one day, for some reason, she gifted me a luxury car worth $50,000.
I got it serviced, so it's ready to drive, LOL, she said.
Having no interest in luxury cars, I decided to let our son use it. However, when our son returned home 5 hours later in the new car, he was furious at his wife. She was surprised and began to apologize, tears streaming down her face. I am Addison, 65 years old. I live with my husband Ivan, our son Jake, and his wife Betty. Ivan has been a construction worker for many years, and even after retiring, he still helps out occasionally. After graduating from college, Jake joined a top company and then incredibly started his own. It's a web-related company, but I don't know much about it. However, the business seems to be doing well as he often happily talks about his colleagues. Originally, Jake and Betty lived separately from us. But, concerned about us aging and living alone, he moved his company closer to our home. After becoming independent, they started living with us, but instead of a happy family, a major problem arose. Betty, our son's wife. She constantly found reasons to complain about me and Ivan.
The bathroom is dirty. Ivan, don't use it, please.
How dare you speak like that?
But it's really dirty. It's just unhygienic.
Ivan, having worked in construction, sweats due to the physical nature of his job. Even though he's over 65 and retired, there's a serious shortage of workers. So he helps out a bit. He often bathes first. But it always causes a conflict with Betty. Both Ivan and Betty are straightforward, so they never got along. Betty has been in a bad mood ever since she moved in with us. Born and raised in the city, she probably hated the idea of living a bit more rurally with us.
What is this house? There are bugs.
Well, of course, there are bugs.
Unbelievable. I never had bugs when I lived in a condo. This is the worst. Get them out.
Our house is a single-family home. Jake rebuilt it, so it's pretty nice, but somehow, spiders and other bugs get in. There seem to be other dissatisfactions, like the department store being far away.
Addison, what is this meal? It's like something for the elderly. I can't eat this.
Is that so? I'm sorry.
Huh, this is really the worst. I'm ordering delivery. I don't need mine.
Betty said this and began fiddling with her smartphone, her knees shaking. Her harsh words made me shrink back. Betty ate pasta and hamburgers she ordered for delivery. Our meals were more vegetable-heavy, but even that seemed to irritate her. Also, she never did any housework.
I can't be bothered with chores. Addison, please take care of it.
All right. I always felt like a housekeeper in my own home, uncomfortable. The strong-willed Betty really didn't get along with Ivan. Ivan is also strong-willed and blunt, so they were always arguing.
Ivan, don't just sit on the sofa when you get home. Huh? Why do I have to listen to you? Because you've been working and sweating all day, right? It's dirty. Now I can't use the sofa. What did you say? Both of you, calm down.
It was always like this. However, Betty's attitude changed when Jake came home. She would be all smiles and charming when Jake was around. I'm home.
Jake, listen. Ivan was being mean to me again.
Again? Dad, don't be too harsh, okay? And Betty, Dad isn't a bad person, he's just blunt.
But Ivan's way of speaking is unacceptable. It's scary.
When Jake was home, Betty clung to him. We were so astounded by her quick change that we were speechless. Then, Betty's harassment escalated beyond verbal abuse. She rarely cooked, but one day she decided to make a meal. It was a weekday lunchtime, so only Betty and I were home. She seemed to be making pasta, warming up some ready-made meat sauce while looking at her smartphone. The moment I tasted the dish she served, I started coughing.
It's spicy. What is this? Haha, your face is so red. That's hilarious.
Betty laughed out loud. She put death sauce, hotter than Tabasco, into my portion. She laughed at me as I desperately drank water and coughed. Other harassments included setting the bath water too hot and deliberately dirtying the laundry. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to Jake.
Sorry to bother you after work. It's about Betty. Things have been really bad lately.
Bad in what way?
She purposely put death sauce in my lunch, made the bath too hot to enter. If there are things she's unhappy about, I'm willing to try and fix them, but could you talk to her?
Really? Jake was surprised and called Betty right away. Are you harassing Mom?
No way. I would never do that. What did Addison say about me? That's terrible. But you put death sauce in my lunch the other day. And there's more. That's not true.
I just wanted to spice things up a bit and it went wrong. I just wanted to make a delicious pasta for Addison. I'm not good at housework.
Mom, I'm sorry. Betty isn't really good at housework. It wasn't on purpose. I'm sorry. I'll stay away from housework since I'm causing trouble, she said in a voice filled with false regret. I wanted to scream out that it was all lies. But I was too scared to think about Jake believing Betty and leaving. Jake, our beloved and only son, who we raised so carefully. I didn't want to become estranged from him at this age. I had no choice but to stay silent. Betty's harassment only got worse.
Addison, isn't the meal ready yet? You're so slow.
I was just cleaning. Can you wait a bit? You're so clumsy. You could help out a little.
But you said I shouldn't do housework. I'm not good at it, so it's your job, Addison. Oh, and since the weather is nice today, please wash our room's sheets and pillow covers.
She laughed heartily. I was exhausted, used by Betty every day without rest. Ivan was worried, but I had given up and said nothing. Then, one day, something happened. Betty came to me with a pleased look.
Addison, as a thank you for always taking care of me, please accept this gift.
She handed me car keys.
This car cost $50,000. It's been serviced and is ready to drive.
The dealer had driven it over, and a luxury car was parked in front of the house.
Why all of a sudden?
I thought you could use a new one since your car is old.
Indeed, my car is getting old, but...
You're happy, right?
Thank you. Confused, I nodded at the pleased Betty. Satisfied with my reaction, Betty returned to her room. I didn't really need the luxury car. I decided to offer it to Jake and take his car, and talk to him that night. Betty gave me this car as a thank you, but I don't need a luxury car. You use it.
Really? Thank you. I'll try it out tomorrow.
Jake smiled happily. The next day, Jake went fishing in the new car. I was doing housework as usual, spending some quiet time with Ivan. Then Jake came home. But something was off, and he was slamming the door roughly. Ivan and I exchanged puzzled looks as an angry Jake entered the living room.
Mom, you got that car from Betty, right? Yes. It was suddenly delivered to our house yesterday. Is something wrong?
Did you touch it?
Of course not. It's a luxury car, so I thought it's best not to touch anything.
Is that so?
Betty!
After hearing my response, Jake called out loudly for Betty. Betty hurried down from her room on the second floor.
Jake, welcome back. What's up? Did you do something to the car you gifted Mom? What? What do you mean? I drove it today, and the engine oil was completely empty. What? You drove it?
I was shocked at Jake's words and covered my mouth with my hand. I was stunned to have given Jake a car with such a defect. Jake looked at Betty with a troubled expression.
It's like you wanted Mom to drive a car without oil. No way! I just wanted to give it as a thank you gift. Today, I planned to go see fishing and drove 2 hours to the spot. But the car made strange noises and even started to smell burnt, so I took it to the dealer, and they said there was no engine oil. Really? I can't believe there was a defect. Maybe the dealer forgot to put it in? I thought so too, but something strange happened. There was no warning light. Normally, when the engine oil runs out, a warning light should come on, but it didn't light up at all. What? I requested a proper service. That's a lie. What?
Betty's expression stiffened at Jake's words.
The person who repaired it happened to be the same person who serviced that car. He said it was strange to get a request to remove the oil and disable the warning light so that no one would notice. It was you, wasn't it? I don't know anything about it.
Betty had deliberately drained the engine oil to make me drive the car. The thought that the engine could fail or cause an accident was terrifying.
I never thought you would do such a thing. No, it's not true. Believe me.
It is true. Ivan, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. Everyone fell silent at Ivan's sudden intervention. Then, Ivan took something out from behind the living room plant. He showed Jake and the others what he removed from the plant.
A camera? Yes. We've been troubled by her harassment for a long time. Thinking you wouldn't believe us, I consulted someone at work, and they suggested keeping evidence. A young guy at work, who's good with cameras and computers, secretly installed these in various places around the house. He set it up so we can view the data on a computer.
Ivan then went to his room and brought back his computer. He wasn't usually a computer user, but he awkwardly operated it and played the camera footage. All the harassment and verbal abuse against me were recorded.
Addison didn't say anything, but it was clear she was being relentlessly worked and was visibly tired. I'm sorry, but if things don't change, we want you two to leave.
Jake clenched his fists tightly at Ivan's words.
It's not true. This is all a lie. What's a lie? You've been lying to me all this time, saying Mom and Dad harass you, are too strict. How could you do such things to someone's parents? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I won't do it again, okay? I can't live with someone who can casually do such terrible things to others. Let's get a divorce. Divorce? That's a problem. Do you know how much that car cost? I took out a loan and can't pay it back. So you married me for the money. That's not true.
I couldn't stand to look at Betty's flustered excuses. I always knew Betty was after the money. She must have been freely using Jake's credit card to shop. Everything she wore was branded. Jake seemed not to notice, maybe because he loved her, but I always thought she was that kind of person.
So how are you planning to pay back that loan? You going to work? Of course you'll work for it, right? Since you gave the car to Mom. If I pay for it, it becomes my gift. Well, I'll do the housework. I'll work and then you pay me. And I'll pay back the loan.
I was appalled at Betty, who seemed to think this was a brilliant idea.
So you plan to dump the work on Mom and just take the money? You never did any housework, always making Mom do it all. That's not true. I can do housework. Then go cook something right now. What?
Jake pointed to the kitchen. Betty's face turned pale and she broke out in cold sweat.
Let's see if your housework is worth paying for. The ingredients are all there.
I had gone to the grocery store that morning. So there should be enough of everything. Betty, thinking she couldn't refuse, trembled as she gripped the knife. She appeared to be trying to make omelette rice. Her awkwardly cut ingredients were unevenly sized. Food spilled from the frying pan as she cooked, and the area around the gas stove was a mess. And the eggs were all broken up. The last time she made pasta, she only warmed up canned sauce. It was clear to both me and Jake that she couldn't cook at all.
And you were going to ask for money for this? You underestimate the job. Do you know how hard I work to earn the money you spend so freely? And to think you'd harass my parents while living off my money. I know that. But I was stressed. I hate this countryside living. Let's go back to our condo in the city. So you took your frustration with country life out on Dad and Mom? Yes. I told Jake I didn't want to come here, but he wouldn't listen.
Honestly, it was hard to watch a grown woman over 30 whine like a child.
Please, let's just live together, the two of us.
Betty repeated her pleas without showing any sign of remorse, almost begging. Jake, coldly responding to Betty, who was looking up at him while holding his hand, said,
Just get out, now. But I've learned my lesson. I'll work hard at housework from now on. Get out!
Jake shouted loudly, dragging Betty out of the house and throwing her out the front door.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm sorry.
Betty cried and banged on the door. Ignoring her, Jake began to throw all her belongings out of the window. Eventually, her apologies turned into quiet sobs. Ivan and I stood in shock, not expecting Jake, usually so calm, to be this angry. After throwing all of Betty's things out, Jake returned to the living room and deeply apologized to us.
I'm sorry I didn't realize sooner. I was blind. I thought living together would make things easier for Dad and Mom. But instead, I made things so much harder.
You finally woke up, Ivan said. Yeah, I knew Betty was reckless with money, but I tolerated it since we weren't struggling financially. But I never thought her character was this bad. I almost lost Dad and Mom.
Indeed, if there had been an accident with that car, there could have been serious injuries. The lack of a warning light isn't just a little prank. Thinking about it now sends chills down my spine. Addison had it the hardest. If you're going to apologize, apologize to her.
Mom, I'm really sorry.
It's okay now. Thank you for believing in us.
I was relieved that Jake finally prioritized us. Just continuing our relationship with the Jake we'd always cherished was enough. Ivan, now that Betty was gone, didn't seem to care much, saying, "We got caught by a strange woman," and casually started watching TV. Betty, having picked up her belongings, was nowhere to be seen. After that, Betty called almost every day.
It's your fault. It's all your fault.
She would scream in a high-pitched voice until hanging up. When Ivan answered, she would just shout, but she seemed to cry and apologize when Jake picked up. The harassment wasn't just through phone calls. Garbage and dead rats started appearing at our front door.
What's all this?
Let's get evidence first, Ivan said. He took photos with his mobile phone and cleaned up the mess, putting the carcasses in a plastic bag. There's no way such bold harassment would go unnoticed. It seemed Jake and our neighbors had noticed too. A neighbor friend called, worried about a strange woman lurking around our house. After asking Ivan's construction company to install security cameras, we caught the entire act on video. Seeing this, Jake sighed. Then the next day, Jake went to the police and filed a report. Eventually, Betty was charged with multiple crimes, including threats and obstruction of business. The recorded phone calls and the garbage left at our front door served as evidence. She also caused trouble by showing up every day at Jake's company to apologize. Such a selfish person. Her selfishness led to more fines, increasing her debts. After that, she apparently sold her branded bags and clothes to scrape by. She got a job, but, inexperienced in the workforce, she couldn't keep it and ended up working at a nightclub to make ends meet. Even there, she couldn't compete with the younger crowd and wasn't earning much, living day to day in a very old apartment. This is what I heard from a neighbor. After she caused a scene, crying and screaming at our front door, the neighbors asked what happened, so I told them everything. It quickly spread around the neighborhood, turning into gossip. I thought she would move far away, but without money to move, she's stuck near our lower rent area, living in an apartment about a 10-minute walk away. Any sighting quickly becomes neighborhood gossip. The neighbors, even more talkative than me, seem to know more about Betty's life. Rumors about her are endless, drunk every night, constantly fighting with different men. Jake's company is doing well, and he's busy every day. Seemingly done with romance for now, he's reaping the rewards of his hard work.
How about going on a trip? He suggested. Really? That would be nice.
As an apology for all that happened. Let's go to a spa. We still live together, Jake, Ivan, and me. Life has been peaceful and comfortable since Betty left. Jake occasionally takes us out for meals and shopping, showing his filial piety. I'm proud of how kind he has become. Is there anything you want? Jake often asks. But I don't really want anything. I'm not interested in luxury goods, and while I'm proud of Jake for starting his company, I don't want to splurge with his money. More than anything, I'm happy just living peacefully as a family of 3. Of course, I'd be happy if Jake brought home a wonderful woman next time. I hope he finds someone special and builds a lovely family.